What would you do if the person you trusted most in the world, your wife, your partner, the one who promised to love and protect you, looked you straight in the eye and destroyed your life with a lie? Darius Hall was 26, a youth counselor in Charlotte who'd turned his life around after a minor drug charge in his teens. He was the kind of man who bought the same sneakers twice, drove a beat-up Nissan, and spent his days keeping kids out of trouble. He thought he'd found his forever in Camille. Quiet, sweet, a nurse who laughed at his jokes and whispered vows in courthouse ceremonies. But behind closed doors, Camille was living a double life. And when she wanted out, she didn't just leave. She planted drugs in his car, called the cops, and sat in that courtroom swearing to tell the truth while sending an innocent man to prison for 15 years. This is the story of what happens when betrayal cuts so deep it rewrites a man's soul. When Darius walked out of prison, he wasn't looking for redemption. He was looking for answers. And what he found in a quiet Savannah neighborhood would change everything. Some wounds never heal. Some betrayals demand a reckoning. And some men, when pushed past their breaking point, stop asking for justice and start taking it.
This narrative will remain with you. If you're prepared for a saga of treachery, vengeance, and delayed justice, press that subscribe button, appreciate this content, and stay engaged. Before chaos erupted, Darius Hall was simply a decent person attempting righteousness. At 26, he maintained full employment at an East Side Charlotte, North Carolina youth facility guiding teenagers, organizing sports programs, preventing kids from repeating his past errors. When Darius reached 18, he faced charges for possessing a small cannabis quantity and several tablets, nothing severe, yet sufficient for brief incarceration and lasting reputation damage. He completed 6 months, returned home, and promised never to return. He honored that commitment, secured employment, attended evening classes, earned youth counseling certification, transformed his experience into inspiration. He avoided flashiness, shunned attention, owned identical sneaker pairs, operated a deteriorating Nissan Altima, and maintained respect for community elders at local establishments. He possessed gentle speech, reliable hands, and excessive compassion for his circumstances. For 3 years, he shared that compassion with one person, Camille Hall. Camille was 28, a nursing aide at Presbyterian Medical, petite, quiet, consistently organized. She'd grown up in a strict religious household where scripture governed every discussion and secrets hid within unspoken spaces. Darius encountered her at a community wellness event where she conducted blood pressure examinations. He mentioned she accelerated his pulse, and surprisingly, she laughed genuinely. That began everything. They embraced love like inexperienced people, quickly, warmly, completely. 2 months later, they cohabitated. 6 months following, they wed at a courthouse with his sister and her cousin witnessing no elaborate ceremony, just rings, joy, and vows whispered privately when unobserved. Yet marriage proved different. Initially, small changes appeared. Camille ceased laughing, returned from work silently, claimed exhaustion, expressed stress. When Darius questioned problems, she'd dismiss them as nothing. When he suggested dates, she'd decline interest. She became temperamental, withdrawn, guarded unlike before. Nightly, she turned away in bed. He attributed it to workplace pressure, convinced himself she needed space, so he provided patients Friday flowers, Sunday massages, Wednesday homemade soup after lengthy shifts. Still, their emotional distance increased. Then Tony Lattimore arrived. Camille met Tony through the hospital. Tony worked emergency night shifts. She embodied everything Camille wasn't. Confident, vocal, self-assured, arm tattoos, lengthy braids, gold earrings, and an expression stating, "Your opinion doesn't matter." She carried herself like she controlled everything. Initially, Camille mentioned her casually. "Tony shared something hilarious today. Tony created this music collection. Tony suggests I changed my hairstyle." Darius listened, nodded, assumed his wife finally found a workplace companion she connected with. However, situations quickly felt wrong. Camille began arriving late, claiming she helped Tony relocate or socialized after work. She'd vanished during free time without informing Darius of her whereabouts. Her phone remained face down. She modified her access code. Darius wasn't possessive but wasn't naive either. One evening, he asked directly, "You and Tony have something happening?" Camille blinked. "What?" "I'm questioning you." She laughed, not genuine laughter, the cutting kind. "You're suspicious," she declared, rolling her eyes. "You constantly seek non-existent problems." "But does it exist?" he pressed. "No," she snapped. "I'm exhausted defending every friendship." "You're suffocating me, Darius." That ended the discussion. Subsequently, Camille moved like a specter, departing early, returning late, completely stopping communication. Sometimes Darius would awake in midnight, finding her standing by the kitchen sink in darkness, gazing out the window. He'd asked about her well-being. She'd claimed tiredness, always tired. Then she began missing work once, again, then thrice weekly. When Darius questioned what was happening, she claimed depression, said she might need time away. Darius encouraged it, suggested therapy, offered bill assistance, anything to restore her to him. But she wasn't attempting to return. He didn't realize yet that Camille wasn't depressed, she was finished. Her only reason for staying was that leaving would complicate things. She didn't want to explain reality to her parents, didn't want to admit falling for a woman, didn't want to face judgment. She desired freedom without shame. And Tony had a solution for that. The affair began quietly, some drinks, some laughter, lingering shoulder touches. Once boundaries were crossed, there was no return. Camille was in love. Not the complicated love she shared with Darius, built on survival, guilt, and obligation. This was different. This was passion, liberation, finally feeling authentic. But it carried costs. Camille understood leaving's meaning. Her parents would disown her, church members would gossip, her reputation would burn among those who once celebrated her wedding. Then there was Darius. He'd never harmed her, never raised his voice, but she knew he wouldn't understand. So she stayed, lied, and awaited the proper escape moment. But Tony wasn't patient. One night, after wine, soft music, and gentle touch, Camille sat on the floor, head resting on Tony's knee, whispering, "If he disappeared, we'd be free." Tony's caressing stopped. "You certain about that?" Camille didn't respond but didn't retract it either. Tony knew a contact named Sean, a quiet, questionable individual who distributed pills and powders secretly. He operated from a barbershop back room, transported products in sandwich bags inside toolboxes. One evening, Tony met Sean behind a Popeyes restaurant. She handed him $500 cash, no questions, just business. In exchange, she received a small black pouch, 3 cocaine vials, 2 oxycodone packages, and sufficient street substances to destroy a man's life. They wrapped it tightly, sealed it, then waited for the right opportunity. That opportunity came Thursday afternoon. Darius was getting a haircut, his car parked outside. Camille possessed a spare key. She slipped away during lunch break, entered the parking lot with racing heart, and opened the trunk. She didn't even observe the pouch as she tucked it beneath the spare tire, slammed the trunk closed, wiped fingerprints from the latch, and returned to work as if nothing occurred. That evening, she smiled at Darius like everything was normal, asked if he wanted tacos for dinner. He agreed, kissed her cheek, told her he loved her, and she nodded, pretending not to feel worthless. The following morning, an anonymous tip reached the Charlotte Metro Narcotics Unit. The caller claimed a man named Darius Hall was selling drugs to children at a local community center, using his nonprofit position as cover, and they'd find the stash in his vehicle. The tip was typed and sent, no fingerprints, no trace, no hesitation. 1 week later it happened. Darius was driving home from work when blue lights appeared in his rearview mirror. He wasn't speeding, had no warrants, so he pulled over calmly, thinking perhaps it was a broken taillight or mistaken identity. When he lowered his window, 2 officers approached with rigid postures and stern expressions. "Mr. Hall," one said, "would you mind exiting the vehicle?" "Everything all right, officer?" "We received a tip." We need to search your car. Darius blinked, confused. Search it for what? Step out, sir. He wasn't thinking criminally, he was thinking crazily. He stepped out, leaned against the hood while they opened the trunk. The moment the first baggie appeared, his stomach dropped. What the hell is that? The officer didn't answer, just held up a plastic pouch like a trophy. Sir, you're under arrest for possession with intent to distribute. You have the right to remain silent. Wait, that's not mine. I don't know where that came from. But the handcuffs were already coiled around his wrists. At the station, he sat silently. He was frightened, but more than that, he was embarrassed. This couldn't be real. He was Darius Hall, mentor, second chance provider, not this. Then Camille entered, tears already flowing, hair pulled into a tight bun, scrubs still on. She looked like a woman in shock. I just discovered this, she told the detective. He's been acting strange. I think he's been selling things at the center. Darius's mouth went dry. Camille? She didn't even look at him. Later, she told the DA she'd found pills in his gym bag weeks earlier, said he had a past, had been arrested before, said she thought he'd changed but now wasn't sure. They offered her a deal, testify, and they'd keep her name clear. She agreed without hesitation. The trial was swift and brutal. The jury didn't need much. Black man, prior drug charge, a bag of product in his trunk, a wife crying on the witness stand, swearing she never imagined he'd return to that life. The prosecutor portrayed him like a two-faced serpent, mentor by day, dealer by night. Darius sat through it all like a man in a dream. He didn't cry, didn't scream, but the betrayal sat in his throat like hot stones. He was found guilty on all counts. The judge didn't blink when she read the sentence. 15 years, no parole for the first 12. When the bailiff took him away, Darius didn't even look back because the one person he thought would stand behind him was the one who buried him initially. They sent him to Caldwell Correctional, a medium-security prison with high walls and little mercy. First week in, he got attacked in the shower by 3 guys who thought he looked too clean, broke 2 ribs, and lost a tooth before guards noticed. That's when he learned prison's first rule. Don't trust silence. Second rule, don't appear weak. Darius kept his head down afterward, ate quickly, slept lightly, spoke only when necessary. He volunteered for janitorial duty, stayed close to older inmates who avoided trouble. The library became his sanctuary, the gym his therapy. Every night he returned to his bunk, stared at the ceiling, and thought about her. Camille. At first, he wrote her simple messages. I still love you, I forgive you, why? No response. He wrote repeatedly birthday letters, apologies for whatever she thought he did, hopes they could repair things. But the mailbox remained empty. By year 2 he stopped writing. Time moved strangely in prison, fast during bad moments, slow during worse ones. Year 7, the phone rang at midnight. A guard called him to the office. Your mother passed, the man said bluntly. Heart attack. Darius just stood there, nodding. Can I attend the funeral? The guard looked up. Not on your sentence. Sorry. That night, Darius didn't eat, didn't speak, just sat in the corner of his cell staring at the wall until morning. His mother was the only person who ever believed in him unconditionally, and he couldn't even say goodbye. By year 9, he stopped calling people, stopped trying to reach out. But then, during a spades game in the recreation yard, an old friend from Charlotte approached and said something that rewired his brain. You heard about Camille? Darius didn't even flinch. What about her? She's down in Georgia now. Savannah, I think. Living with some woman. A long pause. You remember that chick she used to hang with? Tony? The name hit him like a stone to the chest. Yeah, he remembered Tony. From that day on, something in Darius shifted. He didn't yell, didn't snap, but the way he moved changed. The calm, quiet man became colder. His heart turned into a blueprint. His days became strategy. By the time year 15 arrived, Darius Hall wasn't the same man. He walked differently, talked differently, looked in the mirror like he didn't recognize himself but didn't hate what he saw. Bearded, hardened, 41 years old, wiser, colder. The guards opened the gate that final morning like it was any other day. "You got people picking you up?" one asked. Darius just shook his head. "I'll find my way." And just like that, he stepped into the sun. No balloons, no hugs, just air that didn't smell like bleach and steel. But something sat heavy in his chest, not freedom, purpose. Because while the world moved on without him, Darius had spent 15 years with one question on repeat: why? And he was ready to find the answer. He had $1,200 to his name, money saved from janitorial work inside prison. It wasn't much, but it was enough to rent a room on the west side and buy a burner phone. Darius didn't want to rebuild. He wanted answers. He started by asking around quietly, carefully. An old friend mentioned that Camille had moved somewhere south, but details were vague. People didn't talk much about her, almost like she vanished. So Darius took $500 of the only money he had and did something desperate. He hired a private investigator, a man named Reuben, ex-cop turned PI. Darius handed him the name Camille Hall and said, "She lied on me. I just want to know where she landed." 2 weeks later, Reuben came back with a folder. "She goes by Camille Lattimore now. Moved to Savannah about 7 years ago. She's married to a woman." Darius's jaw tightened. "You know her?" "Tony Lattimore." Reuben nodded. "The wife used to be an ER nurse. Now runs some mobile health thing. Camille's a nurse manager at Memorial Health. They own a house together. Nice neighborhood." Then he pulled out a photo. It was grainy, but there she was. Camille walking hand in hand with a little boy who looked about 7. Big eyes, crooked smile. "Whose kid?" Reuben lit a cigarette. "Birth records say Camille gave birth. Used IVF. Sperm donor from a clinic in Atlanta. Paper trail's clean." Darius didn't speak, just stared at the photo. That night, he couldn't sleep. He scrolled through Tony's Facebook public, flashy, filled with selfies, motivational quotes, clips from her clinic. A woman who looked proud, loud, and unbothered. Camille's page was private, no profile picture, no recent posts. But tagged photos told the story: birthdays, baby showers, brunches with friends. She was there, always smiling, free. Then he found a comment from a mutual friend under an old photo. "Can't believe she went that far over what she thought was just a one-night thing." Darius blinked, scrolled back, read it again. He kept digging until the pieces fit. Camille had thought he was cheating. That was it. She'd heard a rumor, something about him hugging a coworker outside the youth center, nothing serious, but in her mind, it confirmed everything. And instead of asking, instead of talking, she chose betrayal, chose revenge. She set him up because she thought she'd been played. And she was actually the one cheating and hiding who she was all along. It was a warm, quiet Sunday afternoon in Savannah, the kind of day made for cookouts and iced tea. Kids rode bikes down the sidewalk, a sprinkler ticked in the neighbor's yard. But Darius Hall wasn't here for peace. He stepped out of his car and walked the last block on foot, calm, hands in his pockets. He didn't flinch when a dog barked from a nearby porch, or when a wind chime clinked softly above him. He just kept walking, one step then another, until he reached the house. 2816. The garden out front was neat, white roses, a lawn chair under a tree, wind chimes near the porch. He knocked once. The door opened slowly. Tony Lattimore stood there in a tank top and sweatpants, her braids tied up in a scarf. She squinted at him, trying to place the face. "Can I help you?" she started. Then she froze. Her jaw tightened, her eyes widened then narrowed. Behind her, Camille walked into view holding a glass of lemonade with slices of strawberry floating on top. She stopped cold. The glass tipped in her hand and shattered against the floor. "Darius," she whispered. He smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. 15 years, he said, voice steady. "Y'all sleep good at night?" Camille's lips parted, but no words came. I didn't mean for it to go like that, she stammered. You have to believe me. Tony moved, hands sliding toward her phone on the entry table. Darius reached into his jacket and pulled out a Glock 9mm matte black and clean. Don't, he said quietly. Sit down. They did. In the living room now. Camille trembling, Tony sitting stiff, fists clenched. You lied on me, Darius said to Camille, his voice low but sharp. Planted drugs in my car. Took the stand. Told the world I was poison. And for what?
Camille opened her mouth, but tears got there first. I thought you were cheating, she said, breath shaking. I thought it was the only way out. I couldn't continue to live a lie. I didn't know, she snapped. And then Tony said we could make it clean. You thought I was cheating? Darius cut in. So you ruined my life? Camille sobbed now. I was scared. I was in love. I hated myself. I didn't know how to come out, how to tell anyone. I didn't want to lose everything. You didn't lose anything, he said coldly. You gained everything. A house, a kid, a new name. Meanwhile, I buried my mama from a prison phone. Tony shifted again. Look, man, this ain't the way. You want to talk? Fine. But not like this. Darius turned the gun toward her and fired twice. The first shot hit her in the chest. The second tore through her throat. Tony fell sideways, gasping, twitching, blood pooling fast beneath her. Camille screamed. She lunged for the door but tripped over the coffee table. Darius walked toward her slow, the way someone walks through rain they've already accepted. She crawled backward, hands up, snot and tears dripping down her face. Please, Darius, please. I was young. I was stupid. I messed up. But I never stopped feeling guilty. I swear. He looked down at her. You swore to tell the truth, he said. He raised the gun. Now tell God. A final shot. Darius Hall drove himself to the nearest police station. He didn't run, didn't hide, no hoodie over his head, no disguise, just a man in a plain t-shirt, eyes dry, hands steady. He parked the car, walked inside, and stepped up to the front desk like he was checking in for a doctor's appointment. I killed 2 people, he said. I'm not sorry. Then he reached into his coat pocket, pulled out the Glock, and placed it on the counter, slide-locked, barrel empty, safety on. The detectives didn't know what to do with him at first. He wasn't yelling, wasn't shaking, just sat there answering questions like he was ordering lunch. When they asked why, he leaned in slightly and looked them dead in the eye. She lied, he said. She stole 15 years of my life. She got to walk around free, happy with a kid and a wife while I sat in a cage. You tell me what I was supposed to do with that. His taped confession was uploaded to the case file later that night. Back in Savannah, the aftermath was quiet but heavy. The little boy, Camille's son, was taken in by Tony's sister, a woman named Rhonda who lived just outside Atlanta. Camille's family went silent. No statement, no funeral details, nothing. In court, Darius didn't cry. He didn't beg. He stood before the judge the same way he walked into prison 15 years ago, stone still. The sentence came down hard. Life without the possibility of parole. Not a whisper in the courtroom, just the echo of justice too late to matter. Now back behind bars, Darius Hall wakes up in a different kind of silence. Same concrete, same clank of keys, but this time he's not confused. He's not asking why. He knows. He spends his days reading, writing, sitting in the yard with a stillness that makes even the guards uneasy. He doesn't fight, doesn't argue. He's not angry anymore because anger comes from expectation, and Darius stopped expecting peace a long time ago. So what do you think? Was Darius Hall a cold-blooded killer, or a man who finally broke after being betrayed by the only person he ever trusted? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear all of it. And if this story gripped your chest the way it gripped ours, hit that like button, share it, and subscribe for more true crime stories that'll leave you thinking long after the credits roll. Because some stories don't fade, they haunt.